guys, I'm Steph.
And I'm Richard. Question from Nicole Lambert. What kind of thing do interracial couples, dating and married, go through? Like, what's the stigma? Is it a good thing, bad thing, frowned upon, taboo topic? Don't you think it's uncomfortable for people to interracially date here, like across the board?
I don't know. I'm not fully set on one way or another because I think it's becoming more acceptable. For example, traditionally, historically, Korea was fairly like a one-race society, but that's quickly changing.
Well, there's different types of situations when it comes to dating. There's people who date for the first time, there's people who are in long-term relationships, and then there's also people who decide to settle down here, raise a family. One's a Korean and one's not Korean or not even Asian. You see all these different scenarios in society or when you go out in Seoul. For example, you could be in the Seoul subway and you could see a couple walking together, say a black dude and a Korean woman, and they got 2 kids.
So?
There's 4 of them.
What's your point?
Koreans are constantly going to notice that. The ability to notice them never goes away.
Okay, as a foreigner, you are going to get stared at in Korea, even more so if you are dating or married to a Korean person.
I guess what I mean is, for example, in New York City, if that same scenario were to happen, less people would be like, ooh, wow, what's going on here? Because we sort of don't really care about that as much anymore. I say we as people in the United States.
Okay, yes, the US is much more of a melting pot and interracial marriage is much more common than in Korea. I have heard stories from people that I know that are dating, have dated, or are married to Korean people that every once in a while you'll run into an older racist person who says nasty things or looks down upon people. That is actually a rarity from what I have heard.
No, but it could happen, and it usually is the case where it's a foreign man dating a Korean woman. Now, Korean men definitely date foreign ladies. It's true, it happens, but by and large, when it's a Korean woman dating a foreign man, if the man who's doing the discriminating wants to say something, then that Korean girl's got to bear the burden because she's the one that can understand what the guy's saying, and the foreigner usually can't. And it's possible that the foreigner speaks fluent Korean also, but usually that's not the way it goes. Usually it's someone who's dating a Korean, and that person doesn't speak Korean.
I think
whether you think it's that way or not, like that's actually the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, you will have that to a certain extent. That does happen occasionally. I think by and large, the biggest people that you're gonna have to deal with is some occasional stares, which you're gonna get stares regardless in this country.
Well, there's a couple of things to take into consideration. One, so say you're not married, say you're just dating, and say you're just a couple, you're the foreigner that's watching this and you want to date a Korean or you're going to date a Korean or you are dating someone and you're living in Seoul. If the two of you are just walking together, you could be friends and nobody is able to know for sure if you're not holding hands if you're together.
True.
That's the case. And in Seoul, there's so much variety at this point that you don't know unless you ask or unless you know that couple. I'm speaking from experience when I say that. I had a Korean girlfriend that I dated for 6 months in 2003. We would go out for walks a lot. That was one of our things. We'd get ice cream, we go for a walk, get ice cream, get coffee or whatever. Something nice and simple in the evening time. And I never really felt like where we live, people were looking at us in like large waves. There was no real intrusion on our privacy when we were in public. However, we did take a trip to Jeju once. And this is when I noticed a big difference. Because clearly, if you're in Jeju and you're traveling and you're a couple, then you're probably together. So then people can assume that you're together. And when we would go out and do tourist things where we would take photos, this was back when selfies really weren't a thing, 2003.
Okay.
So we would hand somebody a camera and everyone would be looking. Like we would be at a tourist spot where lots of people had their cameras and were taking photos. And every time we did that, the eyes would just like burn us straight through our chest. And it's the sort of thing where you can be like, oh, well, if you don't let that happen to you, then it doesn't happen. But actually, you can't help but notice it. And I felt like my partner at the time was similar to you in that between you and I, when we go out in public, I'm the more confident one. And so, because she was also the Korean, she was the one that was like, oh, it's okay, but deep down it really bothered her.
I see. But like, it's changing, and I know that we both know multiple people who are married to Korean people who, I don't think it's really uncomfortable for them. Take for example, there's a guy that you used to work with. He's married to a beautiful Korean woman, he's a bald white dude, and he's got 3 kids.
Yeah.
That are little cutie pies. Like, do you think it's uncomfortable for him?
Well, he lives sort of out in the countryside a little bit. I also think he works 6 to 7 days a week. He's busy working. She's home with the kids. She takes the kids out all the time. All 3 of his children, 2 boys, 1 girl, they look sort of Asian. They look mixed, you could say, objectively judging. But do they go out as a family all the time? No, I think she stays home and cooks a lot. I don't think they're out in Seoul taking the subway often. I think they drive around, and so they're shielded by a car when you drive. Driving allows you a lot more private space. And I think they don't have that many instances where they're going out, like they don't take public transportation, they have a big vehicle. It cuts down on the amount of exposure that other people see. Plus, if he lives in the countryside, there aren't as many people there, and in his neighborhood, people are probably used to seeing him. Plus, his wife is also confident.
Yes, people may look a little bit more, but I do think that it's changing in a more positive manner. Like, for example, if you see a little kid, Korean people love little kids. It doesn't matter what the kids look like. They're always like, so cute. If they're mixed, sometimes they have different characteristics that look more beautiful to Korean people.
Or
like,
unusual and interesting, and curiosity comes in at this point.
Yes, and then they're like, oh, they have such beautiful big eyes. Oh, they have such little faces. Oh, their nose. Like, things that they look for, sometimes you see it more in these mixed children, in which case they love them. What I've heard from most people who've dated or have married Korean people, the biggest hurdle is not necessarily even the people out in public, but is like grandma and grandpa.
That's right.
And making sure that they're okay with the situation.
Well, and the best way to make sure they're okay with it is to not tell them.
And many people I've heard haven't told them for several years, made sure that they're really going to be with this person, and unless somebody gets pregnant, then you tell grandma.
Well, and it's one thing to tell mom and dad, and a lot of times it's hard to tell mom and dad at first, and eventually the barriers thaw and the person who's Korean tells mom and dad. And also there's varying levels of how open-minded parents can be, but then telling the grandparents is a separate issue, more difficult by and large, we've heard. It just makes sense.
It's still new to them having so much, interracial marriage. With young people that I've talked to, there's actually kind of this curiosity about dating foreigners, and some people want to do it.
With some people, there's no curiosity at all. They definitely don't want it. They definitely don't care about it. I don't mean you and I disagree, but this is where people are really widely different. It's tough to just generalize on what's going on here.
Yes, but you do have some people who are really curious. They want to try it out. They want to experience it. Maybe they don't want it long term. They don't want to marry somebody, but they want to at least experience it, have the foreign experience.
And I think that was the case with the ex-girlfriend that I was talking about, the one that we took a trip to Jeju. I remember the first time I went on a date with a Korean. This was a different girl, and I've told you about this recently because when we got this question, I'm like, oh, we should do this question. And I told you about this time, the very first date I ever had with a Korean.
Okay.
She took me to a restaurant in Insadong.
Ah, yes.
And it was, everyone was looking at us when we went in there. She took us to a traditional place, and we had
ultra traditional.
Yeah, we had solongtang, which I hated. And the whole time I was just in there thinking, why? I thought the girl was really nice and I liked her and she liked me, but I thought, why am I doing this? Like, why am I putting myself through this experience? And then as time goes by, you get a little bit more used to it, but you don't really get used to people looking at you so much.
I personally have not had this experience. I have, however, had different gentlemen that I've met through my years in education, where maybe they were a teacher at a school that I taught at, or like a director or whatever, that were like, oh, you should meet my son, or you should meet my nephew, and they wanted to like hook me up, and I had to say, sorry, I'm already taken. But I haven't actually had the interracial dating experience. I can only talk from what I've known and the people that I've known, and I've met some pretty awesome, amazing, happy couples.
Sure. There's a lot of that going on here. And I think there's a difference when you're out in public, if you're walking together, if you're walking and holding hands together. Like, that alone can make a big difference in how people perceive what you are, what you're doing with the person that you're with. My advice would be, if you're going to try and choose a partner in Korea, a Korean partner, if you're a foreigner, try to pick someone with confidence. Try to pick someone who's not going to be easily bullied.
Well, I think that's a good characteristic to have in a lot of people when you're looking for. But I also think that, have somebody that's open-minded, push communication, because sometimes it's, difficult to communicate, especially because of language barriers and stuff like that. Like, talk about these things early on, don't get your heart set, and then, everything fall apart. And
it's definitely an adventure. I recommend it, not from my own personal experience, but I just mean in general for anybody. That's the type of thing that can change your life and for the better, even if the experience isn't all that positive.
If
I'm not saying it's going to be
else-
negative either. I'm just saying.
If nothing else, then you learn a little bit more about culture than you would have otherwise, and probably a lot more about language than you would, not dating somebody.
That's right. And hopefully you get to meet their parents.
So that's it for today's Life in Korea.
Nicole, thanks for your question. If you have a question you'd like us to try and answer, we'll keep making these like it. So if you keep the questions coming, drop a note down below in the YouTube comments. You can also drop us a note on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Hallyu Back, on Twitter at Hallyu Back, and our blog at HallyuBack.com. And we check all of those things religiously every day, because that's what we do.
We also make daily Life in Korea videos on our bonus channel, link in the description, and I Snapchat.
Check the Snapchat. It's easy to find her on Snapchat. Hallyu Back is the username. And like this video, give this video a big thumbs up, as Steph would say. I'm taking over Steph's part.
And subscribe, you guys, for Asian drama and Life in Korea videos.
Thanks so much for watching. That's it for today's Life in Korea. Experience it! I had to pull her away from her computer because she got corrections from her advisor on her thesis today. I'm like, please, can we just do one like it? I really like this question. I think you guys will like it too. Did you like it?
Did you?
Did you like it? Did you like it? I did.
On that note,
Come on, dance with me.
I've got to get back to work.